Hello students, have you all done your homework? So have you all finished your notebooks? I hope you have. Alright, we will continue with that. We will now find out how the early humans obtained food and how did they live. How did early humans obtain food? Early humans would have obtained food through a number of ways, such as gathering, hunting, scavenging, and fishing. Gathering. Gathering would involve collecting plant foods such as seeds, nuts, berries, fruits, and tubers. That gathering was practiced individually rather than collectively. So it was not that the food was gathered for an entire family together. It was individual. So you would, every individual, every human was gathering food for themselves or himself or herself. Fossilized plant remains are relatively rare, but plant remains that were accidentally burnt results in carbonization. In this form, organic matter is preserved for a long span of time to find out evidence for food gathering by early humans. So, finding fossils of plant remains is very difficult. It's very rare. But what you can find out is if accidentally that particular food was burnt, if any plant is burnt, then the remains are carbon dyes. And these carbon dyes they remain preserved for a long span of time. And so we get evidence of food gathering of early humans. Other form was hunting. Hunting probably began later, so about 500,000 years ago. The earliest clear evidence for deliberate, planned hunting and butchery of large mammals comes from two sites. One is Boxgrave in southern England. That means there was we have found a horse shoulder blade with a semicircular hole. We have found a horse shoulder blade with a semicircular hole that has been interpreted as probably a hunting. We are assuming that it was hunted, and this hole represents hunting. There are also contradictory results in that, but this is what has been assumed. And Schonningen in Germany, a 300,000-year-old throwing stick was found. So these are the two evidences that point to hunting, that our early humans or hunting probably began around 500,000 years ago. Scavenging. It is being suggested that the early hominids scavenged or foraged for meat and marrow from the carcasses of animals that had died naturally or had been killed by other predators. So if they found a dead bat or a dead pigeon or a rat or some dead animal, they would eat that. It was not necessary that they would eat only the ones that they hunt. So if any animal had a natural death or was killed by any other animal and the dead body was there, they would eat from that. It is equally possible that small mammals such as rodent, birds, and their eggs, reptiles, and even insects were eaten by early hominids. It is possible that such things are also eaten by early hominids. Of course, fishing. Fishing was also important, as is evident from the discovery of fish bones at different sites. Many sites have shown fish bones. So they would fish it out. They would hunt for fishes and eat that. Fishing was practiced from rivers, ponds, and lakes with hand, stone, and wood by the early humans. These were the tools that they used to fish early. Then how did they live? How was early human shelter? Patterns of residence of early humans. One way of reconstructing the evidence for patterns of residence is by plotting the distribution of artifacts, is by finding out where the different artifacts were found on a map and then finding out where they lived. Some places where food resources were abundant, humans visited repeatedly, have more artifacts. In such areas, early humans left behind traces of their activities and presence. In such areas, early humans have left behind their activities and presence. The places that were less frequently visited would have fewer artifacts. The places that humans less frequently visited had fewer artifacts. Tree. It is also important to remember that the first shelter was tree, and which could have been shared by hominids, other primates, and carnivores. All three would have shared the same shelter, that was tree. Natural caves. Between 400,000 and 125,000 years ago, natural caves began to be used by humans. Evidence for this comes from sites in Europe, in Lazaret Cave in southern France. A 12 into 4 meter shelter was built against the cave wall. A shelter has been built, and inside it there were evidence of stone tools and food sources. So this was evident enough that humans lived in it and the shelter was made. Although it was natural, a part of it was made. Open air. At another site at Terra Amata on the coast of southern France, flimsy shelters with roofs of wood and grasses were built for short-term seasonal visits. So these kind of things were made for seasonal visits. Another thing I wanted to talk about this picture one was the large stone boulders were used to support the sides of the hut. The small scatters of stone on the floor were places where people made stone tools. The black spot marked with an arrow indicates a herd. In what ways do you think life for those who lived in the shelter would be different from that the hominids who lived from the tree? Can you think of two differences between the people who lived in these shelters than the ones who lived in the trees? Okay, I want you all to find out and write about it. Houses made of stone and baked clay. Houses made of stone and baked clay and burnt bone along with stone tools date back to 1.4 and 1 million years ago. These have been found at Chiswanja, Kenya, and Swartkrans, South Africa. There are indications of controlled use of fire. There are evidences that they had started using fire. They could control fire and use it for different needs. Fire had many advantages. It provided warmth and light inside the caves, and it could also be used for cooking. Fire was also used to harden the wood, as for the instance of the tip of spear. Tip of spear had to be very sharp. The use of heat also facilitated in the flaking of tools. So another question that can be asked over here is, how did the use of fire help the hominoids? So you have to list it. Making tools. The use of tools and tool making are not confined to humans. Some chimpanzees use tools that they have made too. Certain anatomical and neurological adaptations have led to the skilled use of hands and fingers, favored tool making by the early humans. Certain changes, that is, some anatomical changes, that is like how our fingers and our toes have shaped, and neurological, that is the related to nervous system. These adaptations led to the skilled use of hands and fingers, which helped in tool making by the early humans. The ways in which humans use and make tools often require greater memory and complex organizational skills, both of which were present in humans. The earliest evidence of making and use of tools comes from the sites in Ethiopia and Kenya. So you will have to remember which evidence points to which. So which sites point to the evidence of tool making, which sites point to the evidence of shelters. You will have to remember this. So please make appropriate notes for that. It is likely that the earliest stone tool makers were the Homo habilis. We anyway say Homo habilis as the tool maker. We do not know whether tool making was done by men or women or both. It is possible that stone tool makers were both men and women. Women in particular may have had to make tools to obtain food for them as well as to sustain their children after weaning. About 35,000 years ago, improvement in the techniques for killing animals were evident from the appearance of new kind of tools such as spear throwers and the bow arrow. Hewing needles and punch blades were two more tools. There were other needs such as strapping of fur-bearing animals and invention of sewing needles. So basically to use the fur of animals to make clothes, etc. The earliest evidence of sewn clothes comes from about 21,000 years ago. Besides, with the introduction of punch blade technique to make chisel-like tools, it was now possible to make engravings on the bone, antler, ivory, or wood. Punch blade technique is, like you can see in this picture over here. Here in this picture, so we have this, and this is a stone, and he's going to punch it here in a fashion that a blade or a part is going to chip out. So you can carve this as well as you can get sharper tools. Yes. Modes of communication language. How did language develop? There are several views on language development. Hand movement. The first use of language was the hominid. The first user of language was hominid. The hominid language involved gestures or hand movements, singing or humming. Later, they developed another way of communication known as vocal but non-verbal communication such as singing or humming. Homo habilis may have possessed a small number of speech sounds in the initial stages. Gradually, they may have developed a language. It has been suggested that the brain of Homo habilis had certain features which would have made it possible for them to speak. So initially they would use hand gestures, then they started humming, and then they had a number of sounds that they used to make. Gradually, these sounds developed into a language, and it is suggested that the brain of Homo habilis had certain features that made it possible for them to speak. So probably uh, the, the humans before them were not able to speak because they did not have that feature in their brain. Language may have developed as early as 2 million years ago. The evolution of vocal tract was equally important. This occurred around 200,000 years ago. It is more specifically associated with modern humans. Language and art. Another suggestion is that language developed around the same time as art. That is around 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. The development of spoken language has been seen as closely connected with art, since both are the media of communication. Art as a mode of communication. Cave painting. Hundreds of cave paintings of animals have been done between 30,000 and 12,000 years ago. And these have been discovered in the caves of France and Spain. These include depiction of bison, horses, ibex, deer, mammoths, rhinos, lions, bears, panthers, hyenas, and owls. So these images have all these things. So some people think that it was a ritual, probably. Several explanations have been offered of why paintings were there. One is that because of the importance of hunting, the paintings of animals were associated with rituals and magic. It was possible that the act of painting could have been a ritual to ensure a successful hunt, such as a big animal that was hunted by an individual. So probably they had a ritual that if you paint the animal, you'll be able to, the hunt will go successful. Or probably the ritual was after you hunt the animal, you come and draw or paint it out so that you can even have a record of it. It could have also been a meeting place. Another explanation offered is that these caves were possibly meeting places for small groups of people or locations for group activity. These groups could share hunting techniques and knowledge, while paintings and engravings served as the media for passing information from one generation to the next. So they're saying probably in these caves there were meetings held and they were discussing with each other what they hunted and how they hunted. And probably these paintings were just a form of media of presentation to each other probably, or kept there so that the other generations would know how to hunt and what to hunt. The above account of early society has been based on archaeological evidence. Clearly, there is so much that we still do not know. Hunter-gatherer society from present to past. Yes, we have hunter-gatherer societies in the present world also. Anthropology. As our knowledge of present-day hunter-gatherers increased through studies by anthropologists, anthropology is a discipline that studies human culture and an evolutionary aspect of human biology of the past. Whether the information about living hunters and gatherers could be used to understand past hunter-gatherer society. One group of scholars suggest that the data from the present-day hunter-gatherer society can be used to understand the past society. So there are two views: if whether the present societies of hunter-gatherers, will it help us to understand the past? So where the anthropologists say yes, it will help us to understand the past better. The ethnography group, that is, ethnography is the study of contemporary ethnic groups. It includes an examination of their modes and livelihood, technology, gender roles, rituals, political institutions, and social customs. So this group of scholars feel that the data, the ethnographic data, cannot be used for understanding past society, as the two are totally different. For instance, present-day hunter-gatherer societies pursue several other economic activities along with hunting and gathering. They include engaging in exchange and trade in minor forest produce, or working as paid laborers in the fields of neighboring farmers. And these societies are totally marginalized in all senses, geographically, politically, and socially. So they're saying that the data is insufficient to help us understand the past. Whereas the anthropology group says, yes, there is enough data and we should study it more to understand the past. Okay, this is your homework for today. You are going to write down about the developments that happened from 10,000 and 4,500 BCE in early human life. And what is the full form of BCE? Before Common Era. Okay, I would like to just share with you a small video.
What our ancestors ate, but how did we separate knowledge from the history? Hey guys, Julia here. There are some people who would like to make inferences on how we should live based on some ideal past. Take a recent trendy diet. The basic tenets of the paleo diet still current hunter-gatherer societies, suggesting we should eat more like we did before the invention of agriculture. But we want an easy answer for how we should live, or more specifically eat. But the real story is so much more complex. So what does evidence say ancient humans ate? From looking at teeth, skull fragments, environmental conditions, even computer models, our ancestors lived in a wide range of habitats, leading to a variety of diets. Optimal foraging theory suggests that diet is influenced by a food's value and its distribution within the habitat. For those of human history who were hunter-gatherers, well, say gatherers, 4 million years ago, our ancestors ate a surprising amount of roots and leaves, similar to how humans eat now. Researchers found isotopic evidence of teeth enamel of a transition around 3.5 million years ago. Early hominid species started expanding their diets. They added other plants like tuberous and succulents. The researchers have added that perhaps these isotopes are from early animals they named that ate those plants. Speaking of meat, it's not certain when meat entered early humans' diet. Whether hunted or scavenged, researchers find evidence of marks on animal bones dating back 2.6 million years. A skull found in Tanzania dating back 1.5 million years showed that meat had become crucial for brain development in early humans. It's thought that eating meat regularly triggered changes in our brains, making us the kind of smart apes we are today. Then there's teeth. You can tell a lot by the teeth size and shape, and even how our jaws fit together to the story. We have back teeth that are lower from cusps that lend themselves well to eating below-ground food like roots and tubers. Our crooked teeth are probably the result of eating food cooking opened up a new way of getting nutrients. As we started softening our food by cooking, our jaws got smaller and our teeth haven't caught up yet. It's all crowding and crooked teeth. Then about 12,000 years ago, we settled down in communities and started growing our own food and foraging or hunting for it. This is commonly called the Neolithic Revolution or Neolithic demographic transition. During this time, humans introduced cereals into their diet, Neolithic founder crops, including wheat, barley, lentils, and peas. Although there's evidence of charred barley and wheat from Israel dating to around 23,000 years ago, there's also some evidence that might bring back the introduction of grain into the human diet to about 100,000 years ago. Researchers from the University of Calgary found starch granules on stone tools. Evidence found in pottery shards suggests that humans added dairy products to their diets around 7,000 years ago. While these advances are more recent, our means evolved to keep up. A genetic mutation in Central Europe just over 7,000 years ago allowed for humans to be drinking milk a thing. So what do you think? Would you switch to an ancient diet? Let us know in the comments below. Keep coming back for new episodes every day of the week.
So this was a nice sum up of how ancient fossils that we have found help us categorize them into different species, and how the jaws and teeth develop and how they help us to differentiate. Also our food habits, how they have changed over the years. So I have given you all enough homework up till now. I hope you all are finishing your notebooks. Stay safe, stay home, and keep learning. Thank you. Bye bye.